Hi, I'm Doug Keck. This is an EWTN Bookmark Brief. Just had the pleasure of speaking with author Francis X. Meier. His book, True Confessions, Voices of Faith from a Life in the Church, by Ignatius Press and available through our EWTN religious catalog, EWTNRC.com, for all things Catholic, especially this book is very Catholic. True Confessions, Voices of Faith from a Life in the Church. Why did you decide to write this book, and why do you think it's important for someone to read it?
Well, I decided to write it because I lived it for 45 years, and I came out of it believing more deeply than when I went in. I mean, I think people have a temptation right now to be nervous about the future of the church. And of course, there are a lot of problems that we have to deal with. But I think the truth of the church is that it's filled with really good people. And this book is just basically a tour from bishops on down to ordinary lay people and what they actually think. And when you read that, you're going to come away, I think, with some of the things are very sobering, but overall it's an extremely encouraging picture.
Now let me ask you from the book itself, how did you decide what questions to ask which particular people? Were they the same set of list for each group?
Yeah, I made a list of basically the same questions for everybody, but they got thrown out right as soon as the conversation started, because each person has a particular focus that they want to communicate. So there were obvious questions. What about celibacy in the future, for example? It's kind of a no-brainer for priests, you know. By the way, they're very strongly in favor of it, you know. But so I had a list of about 20 questions that I sent in advance to everybody. They had an opportunity to say, I want to talk about this, I don't want to talk about that. And then when you get going in the conversation, it takes its own course based on the personality and passions of the person that you're talking to. And you know, the people that I talked to were people that I knew would be faithful. It doesn't necessarily mean they're, you know, Democrats or Republicans. That was never the point. I wanted to talk to people who took the faith seriously, or were at least trying to live it seriously, you know, whatever their other convictions were. And they turned out to be a really interesting crew.
So in the interviews you did and what you did, what was the most surprising thing you heard?
Well, I'm surprised that they were as happy as they were, and they were as hopeful as they were, because I expected a darker picture, but that's not what emerges at the end, you know. So that's kind of a surprise. I was surprised at the people that I talked to being even more dedicated than I thought. I mean, this sounds like I'm jacking up the positive side of it, but that was really my experience. I developed it knowing that I had a strong feeling of faith in the church, but coming away from it, it's even stronger.
Do you think that that still fits into what Pope Benedict and then Ratzinger at the time talked about, the smaller, more Orthodox church? That though there's, obviously we read the book, we know we win in the end, and the church is never going to disappear, though there was no promise about the United States, particularly in Scripture. But that idea that just because things are strong in that way, it doesn't mean things will be the same way they've been, which maybe they've only been since really World War II.
Well, in this country, we've lived through an extraordinary period of peace and comfort and you know, personal success, and that's not normally the way the world works. It's not working that way in most of the world right now. So we have to be prepared for sacrifices in difficult times, but that shouldn't scare anybody. I mean, as I indicate in the book, history is a really important antidote to despair, because when you really know the history of the church, it's both a great teacher of humility, because we have an infinite ability to mess things up and do regularly, okay? But it's also a source of tremendous hope, because God never abandons his people. And again, we go through this period of contraction and then evangelical growth. We happen to be doing exactly what Ratzinger predicted 60 years ago or 50 years ago, which is in a period of contraction. But that presses everybody who's serious about their faith more closely together.
Do you think there's a period of purification in some ways we're going through right now?
Oh yeah, right now. I mean, all the turmoil in the church that one can so easily, you know, lose hope through. I mean, that's a real painful burden. But one of the things to keep in mind is that hope and optimism are two totally different things. American culture is built on optimism. It's always going to get better. Well, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it gets really bad. But hope is a belief rooted in faith that God still is with us and God will carry us through. And that's been proven again and again and again to people who pay attention.
So I paid attention when I read your book. So when you were checking out scripts, one of them was called Shine, which later became The Shining.
Oh yeah, that's a great story.
Did you like that?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. It was. I thought, man, this guy's really got talent. And Gabe Katzka, the producer I was working for, just laughed at me and said, "This guy, that's going nowhere." Well, was The Shining.
Right.
You know, Stephen King, monster hit. You know, so there were experiences like that that were fun things to remember as I.
Well, hopefully this is a monster hit for you. Francis X. Meier, author of True Confessions, Voices of Faith from a Life in the Church, available through our EWTN Religious Catalog. Look for the entire interview we did on our YouTube channel, on our on-demand page, and look for it coming soon on the network. I'm Doug Keck. This has been a Bookmark Brief. Thanks for stopping by. See you next time.